Sorry if the audio is very bad. I am recording this off of a phone. Today we will be reading Shadows, the Horror Movie Heroes, by Clouds, My Head in the Clouds, Not Coming Down. And there's the summary if you want to read it. Izuku couldn't breathe. Sorry, kid. The sludge villain squeezed a little tighter. I didn't know All Might was in town. I can't afford to stick around. Also, my reading skills are horrendous, so don't worry about it. Izuku's vision started going dark as he clawed uselessly at the villain. This was really it, wasn't it? He was gonna die. Redundantly, he stopped fighting, slowly giving in to fear and dread as the rest of the air ran out. Destroy! Smash! Izuku heard a terrified scream from the villain before he passed out, and the next thing he knew, he was getting slapped awake by All Might. Wait! All Might! Izuku sat up straight. You saved me! Of course you saved me! Thank you for saving me. I have a notebook. Will you please? All Might gave a booming laugh. Ha 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 ha! I don't know how to do the All Might laugh at all. And handed him his notebook. Already done, my boy. My apologies for letting you get caught by the villain. Back in the day, you would have never even reached the sewers. Now, if you excuse me, I must be on my way. Wait, Izuku reached toward him. I have so much to ask. Ch1 was right. Izuku was an idiot. He realized that All Might was about to launch off, but he grabbed onto his leg anyways. He knew how far All Might could jump. He knew every statistic there was on him. He knew how dangerous that was. Why in the world had he done that? As soon as he noticed Izuku, All Might started shaking his head. Come on, kid. I get being a fan, but this is too much. All Might clung on even tighter. If I let go now, I'm gonna die. Oh, All Might blinked like he hadn't even thought about that and grabbed Izuku's collar. All right, just close your mouth and your eyes, kid. You look gross. Izuku did as he was told, and after a few seconds, he felt a jolt as All Might landed. Immediately, all the terror-fueled strength he had known he had left him, and he collapsed onto the ground. I'm alive! Barely. All Might huffed. What was so important? That you did something that's so stupid, kid. Izuku pulled himself to his feet. I need to ask you a question. Well, kid, out with it, All Might pronounced. I don't have all day, you know. Izuku took a deep breath. It's just, my whole life I wanted to be a hero, but everybody says I can't. So, is it possible, even though I'm quirkless, I can be a hero like you? Sometime while he was talking, smoke filled the air, the rooftop, and by the time he gathered his courage, he looked at All Might. Was gone? Izuku screamed. Ah! It's still me, kid. Don't be so dramatic. All Might groaned and lifted his shirt to show Izuku a large scar. This is a scary career, kid. You fight powerful villains head-on enough, and this injury was just one guy, so you can't be a hero. So can you be a hero, kid? Not without a quirk. All Might kept talking, but Izuku was too focused on holding back his tears to hear any of it. At some point, All Might pushed past him, and after that, there was really no point in staying. So Izuku forced himself to get moving. He was really just been lying to himself all these years, hadn't he? Izuku didn't really know where he was going, probably home, since there was no point in going to the villain fight he could hear going on in the distance. Now that the notes were useless, if even All Might said it was impossible, it was true. He couldn't be a hero. What was he going to do now? So he was so wrapped up in his thoughts that he almost didn't hear the commotion in the alley. It wasn't nearly as loud as the fight in the distance, but it was still enough to get his attention. Now that he was paying attention, Izuku could hear punches being landed and someone yelling about a villain. And before he knew it, he was walking toward the fight on autopilot. It must be a minor villain because probably with a weaker quirk. The ones with stronger quirks usually drew a crowd, and most of the heroes were probably at the other fight. So even if it was still going to be a hero, there wasn't really any point in watching. He found himself rushing to the alley anyway, only to skid to a stop as he realized it wasn't a villain fight at all. A group of kids his own age was clumped around a few ringleaders who were either pinning down or beating up their current victim, a lanky kid with purple hair. Well, it was most likely a verbal quirk, considering the boys were bothered to cover his mouth. If it had been Izuku, ch1 would have just let him scream. Why are you even thinking of applying to UA? One of the ringleaders sneered. You're a villain, and that's what you'll always be. Why would a school like UA even think of letting someone like you be a hero? So the kid had a villain's quirk. Izuku winced sympathetically. That was pretty much as bad as being quirkless in a lot of people's eyes. Somebody landed a punch in the kid's gut, and he let out a muffled grunt. Izuku couldn't help himself. He stood between ch1 and other kids so many times that his feet just moved on their own, and he took 2 steps forward until the kids saw him. Instead of looking at him with hope and gratefulness, though, the kid just shook his head sternly. Shook his head. What? He just said that twice. What the fuck? Izuku froze. One of the bullies snarled. What are you looking at, villain? Izuku ducked behind the dumpster as a bully turned his head. The kid obviously didn't want him interfering. Not that Izuku could do much good anyway, but still, after a few seconds, he peeked out, but made sure to keep to the shadows as much as he could, so he wouldn't be seen. The boys were looking around nervously, and even though they turned back to the kid, they had obviously been thrown off their rhythm. Interesting. Do you think somehow he called one of his villain friends? One of the lackeys hissed. What are we gonna do if he calls for backup? He didn't call for backup, the ringleader insisted, but Izuku was surprised that he didn't believe it. The villain doesn't have any friends and could come and help him in the first place. Izuku frowned. At least he had ch1, even though he wasn't quite sure if that counted as friendship. But from the sound of it, the kids didn't have any friends at all. It must be so lonely. There must be something he could do to help. The boys were still nervous, and a couple had started shifting like they were about to bolt. Izuku had to stop himself before he started muttering. They were that thrown off by the suggestion that backup was coming. What were they so afraid of? Was it just that they don't know what might come? If they knew who was hiding, they wouldn't be scared at all. So the fear of the unknown must be part of it. What if they thought he had a strong quirk? Would it be more scared or less? One of the boys glanced around the alley before huffing and shoving the kid to the ground. Whatever, I was getting bored Anyway, don't even bother applying to UA, villain. The kid glared after them, and Izuku ducked back behind the dumpster. They stalked out of the alley. He waited until the last one was gone before running toward the kid. Hey, are you okay? The kid rolled his eyes. Just peachy. Oh, I have a first aid kit. Izuku swung his bat off of his shoulder and started digging through it. I have bandages, Berkrun, and don't bother. I have my own. The kid was already kneeling next to his own backpack, and within a second he pulled out a first aid kit just as intense as Izuku's. So you're obviously pretty beat up too. Oh, wrong voice. So you're obviously pretty beat up too. What they hate you for. Oh, Izuku's face fell. I'm quirkless. All of a sudden, Izuku's brain felt fuzzy, and his arms fell limply at his sides, and the fingers barely managed to hang onto the strap of his backpack. The kid refused to look at him as she banged and bruises. Go away. Izuku couldn't say he was very surprised when his body started obeying on its own. Brainwashing would explain why the other kids were calling him a villain and why they were covering his mouth, since it seemed to activate with a question. That was such a cool quirk. He really hoped the kid ignored his boys and tried for UA anyways, because he would be able to save so many people someday. Took a few blocks to clarify, as far away enough for the quirk to deactivate, and at the moment he had his brain back, Izuku sighed in defeat. There was no point in turning around and trying to find the kid again. He was probably long gone by now, but Izuku had ended up wandering in the direction of the other villain fight, so he might as well stop by there now. It didn't take him long at all to find the crowd, but instead of catching the tail end of the cleanup, the fight was still going on and must be a strong villain. How long has the kid been in there? I don't know, but if he's still alive, he hasn't got long. The villain had a hostage. What was the villain's quirk? Was it something with fire, or Izuku finally elbowed his way through enough of the crowd to be able to see the villain, and he gasped. The sludge villain must have escaped the bottles that All Might shoved him in. This was his fault. He hadn't grabbed on the All Might, he wouldn't have dropped the bottles, and even if for a reason he had, then he would have still had just enough time to recapture him. Izuku cursed himself and pushed a little closer. Was the hostage even alive? Izuku had felt like he was going to die after only a few seconds. The hostage was struggling weakly at this point, but considering all the fires the heroes were fighting, it must have some sort of fire quirk. Izuku leaned forward as he saw a tiny bit of flame burst from one of the victim's hands. No, it was an explosion. Kachan? Izuku yelled and almost started running before he catched himself. The kid earlier was right. If he went out there right now, he would just be an extra victim for the heroes to save, but they had to be something he could do. All Might wasn't coming. He was all out of energy for the day. But, well, actually, the villain didn't know that, did he? In spite of himself, Izuku smiled. The sludge villain was terrified of All Might, just like those boys had been scared of him when he hidden behind a dumpster. Well, more scared of the idea of him, but still, they given up rather than risk fighting against an enemy they couldn't beat. A half-baked plan already in mind, Izuku took a big breath and yelled at the top of his lungs, "All Might's at a fight down the street. He'll be here any minute." The crowd started chanting All Might's name, and the villain instantly tensed, torn between taking over his hostage, who wouldn't be a good disguise at this point, and making a run for it. Izuku elbowed his way to the front of the crowd, and he just needed the final push. The villain was looking around frantically for All Might, so it didn't take long for his eyes to widen in recognition as he spotted Izuku in the crowd. Izuku gave his best, most confident smile and called out, "Well, do you really think you'll escape the number one hero again? Really?" The villain hesitated for the final second before expelling ch1 onto the pavement with a squelch noise. I don't know how to make that noise. Squish, squish. I don't know. I don't know. A villain was once again in custody. Izuku weaved his way back through the crowd before ch1 could see him and make his way home deep in thought. He asked All Might if a quirkless kid could be like him, and the answer he got was true. Izuku would never be like All Might. He wouldn't be able to bring hope the way a symbol of peace was, but he thought back to the way the boys and the villain ran away. Maybe he could be another kind of hero instead. That was chapter 1 of Shadows, what was it called? Shadows, the horror movie heroes. The clouds, my head in the clouds, not coming down. Bye.